Welcome back to our channel. In today's story, when a giant cat is abandoned at a shelter, his previous family claims he didn't get along with their children. However, the behavior they describe doesn't match what the shelter staff observes. Just hours later, the unthinkable happens. Make sure to stay tuned to find out what happens next, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to support the channel. The doors of the Humane Society of Carroll County, Maryland had just been opened for the day when a man stumbled through the door holding the largest cat the receptionist had ever seen. The ginger and white cat barely fit in the man's arms, which probably explained the uncomfortable look on his face. But as he started to explain the reason for his visit, the receptionist sensed that there was more to his story than he was letting on. They'd seen all manner of things at the shelter over the years and were pretty good at spotting when something was off. Readjusting the cat in his arms, the man explained that he needed to surrender the cat due to his inability to get along with the family's young children. He explained that the cat was named Edgar and that he was a bad match for their rowdy house. He seemed too aloof. The receptionist nodded along, but she'd heard enough to suspect that the man was being a little vague with the truth. Usually, animals weren't aloof for no reason, and Edgar didn't look happy. She, of course, couldn't be sure, so she didn't say anything to the man, but she suspected the children had been far too rough with Edgar and had never really been told to behave nicely around him. The man placed Edgar on the floor without even one last pet goodbye and turned to leave, clearly having wiped his hands of the cat. The receptionist was stunned. She rushed straight around to Edgar. Despite his giant size, the poor cat looked lost and scared, so she slowly bent down to stroke him, not wanting to scare him. To her surprise, Edgar rubbed straight up against her hand and began to loudly purr. It wasn't really fitting with the aloof description the man had just given. The cat seemed to be a gentle giant, and it caused the receptionist to wonder even more about what had gone on with his family. Edgar had joined the family when he was young, but as he grew rapidly, the family was shocked by his size. The young children believed that just because the cat was so big, they didn't need to be gentle with him. Soon, their rough handling and shouting caused endless stress for Edgar. The poor cat would try and avoid the children and hide, but being so big meant there wasn't really anywhere for him to go, and they always seemed to track him down. Edgar was an affectionate cat, but he soon turned defensive because of the children's unruly behavior. No one ever bothered to try and correct the children, blaming the poor cat instead. Just because he'd been scared and stressed, he'd now been abandoned at the shelter. The large cat lounged on the cool, tiled floor of the Humane Society. He seemed more relaxed now, and the receptionist couldn't help but think that this was probably the first time in a long time that he'd actually been able to let his guard down. The shelter staff bustled around him. He'd caused quite a sense of awe and curiosity with his size, as the shelter didn't think they'd ever had a cat so big in their care before. It wasn't just his impressive weight coming in at a solid 21 pounds, it was his height too. He was a giant in every sense of the word. His fur was thick and shaggy looking, hinting that Edgar may have Maine Coon DNA. Maine Coons are known for their large size and affectionate nature, which certainly seemed to fit Edgar. Whenever a new animal came into their care, the first thing the staff of the Humane Society did was formulate an adoption plan for them. As much as they fell in love with every animal that came through their doors, it was important for them to find a new home for them as soon as possible, as long as there were no medical or behavioral issues. Edgar had been checked out and seemed to be fit and healthy, and the way he was currently rolling around, allowing everyone to tickle his belly, just confirmed to the shelter staff that he was a gentle giant. They were determined to find Edgar a new, more suitable home where Edgar could be his calm and affectionate self. It was clear the cat had a lot of love to give, and they wanted to make sure that he would never have to experience that level of stress and fear again. The first plan to get Edgar adopted was a social media campaign. They knew that his unique look was bound to attract a lot of attention on social media sites, and all the shares and comments would boost his profile and hopefully land him a new owner in no time. They took a series of funny and cute photographs of him and launched the campaign immediately. Now it was a case of sitting back and waiting to see what happened. They'd had success with other adoptions doing things this way, but they were shocked to see that within minutes, Edgar's pictures were circulating on Facebook. His huge stature and the description of his gentle nature had captured the attention of countless animal lovers. The shelter was confident that they'd soon be receiving requests from people keen to take Edgar home, but there was only one person who would be able to take him home. Jenna was casually scrolling through her Facebook feed, not really paying too much attention to what she was seeing when Edgar's photo appeared. She stopped mid-scroll, captivated by the cat's size and his bright ginger fur. She'd been around cats most of her life, and she'd never seen one as impressive as Edgar. It was clear that the cat loved. When Jenna and Rich arrived at the shelter, they were shown into a quiet room where Edgar lay stretched out, seemingly unfazed by all the attention he was receiving. Jenna approached him cautiously, eager for them to get off to a good start. To her delight, Edgar greeted her with a soft purr and a nudge of his head against her hand. His affectionate nature was immediately apparent, but when Jenna began to tickle behind his ears, the full force of Edgar's affection came out. He started to roll around and purr loudly, a content look on his face. As soon as Jenna stopped, he nudged her as if asking for more. Jenna laughed. He was certainly a character, and she fell in love with him instantly. After completing the necessary paperwork for the adoption, Jenna and her boyfriend took Edgar home. It had only been 3 hours since he'd been surrendered to the shelter, and he was already on his way to a new life. This was an even better outcome than the Humane Society had hoped for. Jenna was excited to see how Edgar would fit into their family and how Loki, their other cat, would react to his new companion. But something unthinkable was about to happen. When they arrived home, Loki and their dog, Thor, immediately came over to greet the newcomer. However, when both animals saw Edgar's size, they cautiously retreated. Loki was usually a confident cat, but he was dwarfed by the giant. Thor, being a Chihuahua, looked even smaller next to Edgar. The couple decided to take the introduction slow, giving all the animals time to warm up to each other. Edgar was left to explore his new home, while Loki and Thor spent some time in a separate room. Slow and steady was the key to making this work, and Jenna was confident that her other two pets would soon be won over by Edgar's lovable personality. For a while, Edgar explored his new surroundings with great curiosity. After going in and out of every room a few times, he decided to settle down for a nap. It had been a very eventful day, leaving one family and joining another, so it was no surprise that he was tired. However, when he woke up just 30 minutes later, something about the gentle giant had changed. All of his energy seemed to have been zapped out of him, and he didn't seem interested in coming near Jenna or Rich. Jenna was worried this wasn't the cat they'd seen at the shelter, or even the one who had been energetically exploring his new home not that long ago. Rich tried to reassure her, saying it was all part of the settling in process, but Jenna wasn't so sure. Something didn't feel right, so she told her boyfriend that, given they didn't know much about Edgar, she'd feel a lot better if they could get him checked out with their own vet, just to be sure. At the veterinary clinic, Edgar seemed to have gotten worse. The cat looked deeply unhappy and lethargic, and Jenna was now very worried about what was going on. They had been told the reasons for his surrender and assured that his checkup had given him a clean bill of health. He was up to date with all his vaccines, and he had seemed totally fine until his nap. The couple wasn't prepared for the results of the examination with their vet. Poor Edgar had a mild heart condition that had likely been worsened by stress. Given what the shelter told the couple about the way he'd been treated by his last family and everything that had happened in the last few hours, it was hardly surprising the poor cat wasn't feeling well. But it seemed unthinkable to Jenna that they might lose him already. The giant cat just couldn't get a break. The vet ran a few more tests while Jenna and Rich anxiously awaited the outcome. Edgar might not have been with them for long, but Jenna had been looking forward to life with a new companion and wanted to give him a happy life after all he'd gone through with his last family. If Edgar was sick, then that chance might be ripped away from them all. When the vet next appeared, Jenna tried to judge from his face whether she needed to prepare for good or bad news. The couple breathed a sigh of relief when the vet said the words, "It's good news." Edgar's heart condition wasn't severe, and with regular checkups and monitoring of his weight and stress levels, there was no reason he couldn't live a long and happy life. Eventually, he may need medication later in life, but for now, the vet was happy that nothing too serious was going on. With gentle exercise, Edgar should be able to maintain a healthy weight and keep his heart working as it should. The couple spent the next few days letting Edgar properly settle in. They'd never imagined receiving such unthinkable news just a few hours after adopting him, and the poor cat hadn't even had a chance to truly get used to his new home. While Edgar was adapting, Jenna got to work on following the vet's instructions and encouraged interaction between Edgar, Thor, and Loki. The more time Thor and Loki spent around the giant cat, the more they started to realize that there was nothing to be scared of and that he just wanted to be friends. Loki was the first to engage and play with his new companion while Thor stayed close by, watching the pair until he decided it was safe enough to join in. To Jenna's relief, Edgar was making a swift recovery. It was like he had allowed himself to relax fully and enjoy himself when he saw that Loki and Thor were friendly and that the couple just wanted to shower him with love. All the tension seemed to leave his body as he became part of a new family. Over time, Edgar, Loki, and Thor formed a close bond. They were often found lounging together, a strange-looking trio basking in the sunlight or curled up on a bed. Edgar was definitely living up to being a gentle giant, proving to be an affectionate and loyal companion. His previous family's assessment seemed more puzzling to Jenna than ever, and she could only imagine how much the children must have terrorized the poor cat for him to turn on them and become so stressed. Edgar's calm and loving manner was a stark contrast to the picture painted when he was abandoned at the shelter. She would never understand why the poor cat got the blame instead of the children being taught how to properly play with him. But their loss was her family's gain, and they were more than happy to have Edgar around. Jenna was pleased to see that monitoring Edgar's weight and stress was no trouble at all. He loved to play with Thor and Loki and seemed happier than ever. When he wasn't playing, he'd seek out Jenna or Rich for a cuddle and a nap, taking up as much room as he possibly could. They didn't mind one bit. They were just happy to see him so excited. Months passed, and Edgar settled into his new life as if he had always been a part of it. Jenna would be forever grateful that her mindless scrolling on Facebook had led her to the gentle giant. It was clear that Edgar had finally found his place in the world. Now it's over to you. What do you think of this story? Have you ever seen a cat as big as Edgar? We'd love to hear your thoughts, so please leave a comment below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.